HOA said my lawn was too green and fined me. The judge couldn't stop laughing. The morning sun drapes its golden light over Kingston Heights, a pristine suburban neighborhood where every house looks plucked from a glossy real estate magazine. Manicured lawns stretch in perfect rows, neatly trimmed hedges frame white picket fences, and the air carries the faint scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass. Darius Walker leans on his porch railing, sipping his coffee as the hum of sprinklers fills the air. His lawn, a deep emerald green, rolls out in front of his house like velvet. It's his pride and joy, the product of early morning waterings, meticulous fertilizing, and a love for gardening passed down from his grandfather. "Looking good, Mr. Walker," says Mrs. Ramirez from next door, waving as she tugs her terrier down the sidewalk. "Thanks, Mrs. R. Trying to keep the place looking decent," Darius says, flashing a warm smile. She chuckles. "Better than decent. Best lawn on the block." And that's when Darius notices them. A trio of middle-aged homeowners huddled near the corner, throwing occasional glances his way. At the center of the group is Alan Prescott, the Homeowners Association president. His posture is stiff, his arms crossed, his expression one of mild disapproval, as if he's assessing something out of place. Darius has lived here for 3 years. He's no stranger to the subtle looks, the polite but clipped greetings, the feeling of being watched just a little too closely. It's always been unspoken, that undercurrent of quiet disapproval from a few of the old guard residents. But today, something feels different. As he turns to go inside, a crisp white envelope flutters against his doormat. His name is printed on the front in sharp, blocky letters. Kingston Heights HOA, notice of violation. His brow furrows. A violation? For what? He rips open the envelope and scans the paper inside. Your lawn has been deemed out of compliance with the HOA's community aesthetic standards due to excessive color saturation. Please remedy this unnatural appearance within 14 days or face fines. Darius blinks. His lawn is too green. He exhales a sharp laugh, expecting, hoping this is some kind of bizarre joke. But the longer he stares at the letter, the more real it becomes. Beyond the porch, Alan Prescott stands with his arms still crossed, watching. And in that moment, Darius knows this isn't about the lawn. Darius rereads the notice, his pulse steady but his mind racing. Excessive color saturation? He's never heard of that before. And he knows for a fact that other lawns in Kingston Heights, lawns owned by certain neighbors, are just as green, if not greener. He tucks the letter into his pocket and steps off the porch, scanning the other houses. The Jenkinses' lawn 2 doors down is lush and vibrant, practically glowing under the morning sun. The Wilsons across the street, same thing, but none of them have envelopes sitting on their doormats. The hairs on the back of his neck prickle. A slow crunch of gravel behind him makes Darius turn. Alan Prescott approaches, his stride measured, hands clasped behind his back like he owns the block. His graying hair is perfectly combed, his polo tucked neatly into beige slacks. He's the kind of man who looks like he was born into authority. "Morning, Mr. Walker," Alan says with a polite but thin smile. "Got your notice, I assume?" Darius keeps his expression neutral. "Yeah. Mind explaining how my lawn is a problem?" Alan sighs, shaking his head like he's disappointed Darius even has to ask. "It's about maintaining a harmonious aesthetic for the community. Your grass, well, it stands out a little too much. We aim for a uniform look in Kingston Heights." Darius chuckles dryly. "You mean like the Wilsons' lawn? The Jenkinses?" He gestures down the street. "Pretty sure their grass is just as green." Alan's smile doesn't waver, but there's something in his eyes, something calculated. "The board has determined that your property needs adjusting. It's nothing personal, of course. Just the rules. Just the rules." Darius knows this game. He's seen it before. The polite words wrapped around something uglier. The unspoken message. You don't belong here, and we'll find a way to remind you. He crosses his arms. And if I don't adjust, Alan gives a slow, measured nod. Then the fines begin. His voice is even, controlled. And if those aren't paid, well, I'm sure you understand how HOAs work. We take compliance very seriously. There it is, the threat, tucked neatly behind a friendly smile. Darius forces a tight grin. I see. Alan glances at his watch. Glad we understand each other. Have a good day, Mr. Walker. As Alan walks away, Darius watches him join two other board members near the corner. They speak in hushed tones, eyes flicking toward him. A slow, simmering heat builds in Darius's chest. This isn't about the grass. And if Alan Prescott thinks he can push him out, he's got another thing coming. Darius isn't about to let this slide. By the next morning, he's done his research. He scoured the Kingston Heights HOA bylaws and found exactly what he expected. Not a single mention of excessive color saturation as a violation. It's a made-up rule, and he knows exactly why it's being enforced only against him. With his copy of the bylaws in hand, he marches to the HOA office, a small brick building near the community clubhouse. He swings open the glass door, startling Lisa, the receptionist. Oh, Mr. Walker, she stammers, adjusting her glasses. How can I help you? I need to speak to Alan Prescott. Lisa hesitates, glancing toward a closed office door. He's in a meeting. Darius folds his arms. Then I'll wait. Lisa fidgets but nods. 5 minutes later, Alan's office door swings open, and the man himself steps out. His smile is polite, but his eyes are calculating. Mr. Walker, Alan says smoothly, what can I do for you? Darius holds up the HOA bylaws. I need you to show me where it says my lawn is a violation. Alan's smile doesn't falter. The board has discretion to enforce community standards, so there's no actual rule. Alan's jaw tightens, but his tone stays calm. The board sets precedent, and we've determined that your lawn does not align with the aesthetic of Kingston Heights. Darius exhales a sharp laugh. Oh, is that right? Because I checked, and the Wilsons' lawn is just as green. The Jenkinses too. But I'm the only one getting fined. Alan's face remains neutral. Mr. Walker, we're not singling you out. Then show me the complaints. Who exactly took issue with my lawn? Alan tilts his head. That information is confidential. Darius nods slowly. Of course. Alan leans in slightly, voice dropping. I suggest you comply, Mr. Walker. The fines escalate, and if left unpaid, the HOA has the authority to place a lien on your property. You wouldn't want that, would you? Darius meets his gaze, his stomach twisting at the veiled threat. You're seriously threatening my home over a lawn? Alan shrugs. Rules are rules. Darius clenches his jaw. All right, if this is how he wants to play it, fine. Pushing back. That night, Darius takes to the Kingston Heights Community Facebook group. He posts a picture of his lush, green lawn with the caption, "Just got fined by the HOA for my lawn being too green. Funny thing, my neighbors' lawns look just like mine, but they didn't get a violation. Wonder why that is." The responses flood in within minutes. Wait, what? That makes no sense. The HOA is out of control. They fined my cousin last year for unauthorized patio furniture, but my white neighbor had the same set and was fine. Darius reads every comment carefully. Patterns emerge. Alan Prescott has a history of selective enforcement, fines disproportionately targeting minority homeowners, nitpicking rules that don't seem to apply to everyone else. Darius screenshots everything. He's building his case. Retaliation. The next morning, a third notice is taped to his door. Final warning. Failure to comply will result in immediate $1,000 fine. Darius grips the paper, anger bubbling in his chest. He barely has time to process it before he sees Alan across the street. Speaking to a landscaper, Darius marches over. Prescott! Alan turns, his expression unreadable. Mr. Walker, you escalated the fine in 1 day. Darius shoves the notice forward. Alan sighs. You were given a reasonable amount of time to comply. The board has made its decision. Darius steps closer. You're targeting me, and I have proof. Alan's lips twitch into something that might have been a smirk. Mr. Walker, if you have a problem, you're free to take it up at the next HOA hearing. Darius exhales, steadying himself. Oh, don't worry. I will. What Alan doesn't know is that Darius isn't coming alone. He's bringing the entire neighborhood. The HOA hearing is packed. Normally, these meetings are sleepy affairs, attended by a handful of residents with nothing better to do. But tonight, the community center is full. Neighbors murmur, shifting in their chairs, waiting. The air is charged. People know something is about to go down. Darius sits near the front, his posture relaxed, but his hands grip a folder filled with evidence. His heart pounds steadily, not from nerves, but from anticipation. At the long board table, Alan Prescott sits in the center, flanked by 2 other board members. He looks composed, like a man who believes he's already won. Lisa, the HOA secretary, clears her throat. Next on the agenda, Mr. Darius Walker's appeal regarding his violation notice. Alan leans forward, steepling his fingers. Mr. Walker, you've been given multiple warnings regarding your lawn's violation. The board has determined your property does not comply with community standards. You are now facing a mandatory $1,000 fine. He pauses, scanning the crowd. He's performing, acting like this is just another formality, like this won't be more than a brief footnote in the meeting minutes. Darius lets the silence hang for a moment. Then he speaks. Alan, I've got one simple question for you. He taps the HOA bylaws in front of him. Where exactly does it say a lawn can be too green? Alan barely blinks. As I've explained, the board has discretion. Darius holds up a hand. No. I don't need another vague answer. I need a page number, a section, a real rule. The room is dead silent. Alan's jaw tightens. He shifts slightly in his chair. Darius leans forward. You can you? Because it's not in there. Murmurs ripple through the room. A few neighbors nod, exchanging glances. Alan exhales through his nose, his patience fraying. Mr. Walker, the board has the right to enforce standards as needed. Darius lifts a stack of papers. Funny you say that, because I went ahead and pulled the last 10 years of HOA violations issued in Kingston Heights. You know what I found? Alan remains silent. Darius slaps a page onto the table. Not a single white homeowner has ever been fined for their lawn. Not once. He lifts another page. But you find every minority homeowner in this neighborhood at least once, most of them for nonsense violations that don't exist in the bylaws. Gasps. A woman in the back mutters, "Oh my God." Darius doesn't stop. He lifts his phone, scrolling, and it gets better. I went through the community Facebook group. Residents have been talking about your selective enforcement for years. People have noticed what you're doing, Alan. Alan's face is a rigid mask now, but a flicker of panic glints in his eyes. Darius turns to the crowd. How many of you have seen Alan enforce unwritten rules? A few hands shoot up immediately, then more, then half the room. Alan shifts in his seat, still clinging to authority. This is absurd. You're cherry-picking data, and these are baseless accusations. Darius smirks. Baseless? Well, I've got one more thing. He presses a button on his phone. A recording begins to play. Alan's own voice fills the room. "I suggest you comply, Mr. Walker. The fines escalate, and if left unpaid, the HOA has the authority to place a lien on your property. You wouldn't want that, would you?" A hush falls over the room. Alan's face drains of color. Darius lets the recording play out. The veiled threat, the arrogance, the entitlement. When it ends, the silence is deafening. A board member clears his throat. "Alan, is this real?" Alan flounders, scrambling for control. This is being taken out of context. He turns to Lisa. "End the meeting. Now." Lisa doesn't move. A man in the front row speaks up. "We should vote on his removal." Alan's head snaps up. "What?" More voices rise. "Yeah, we should vote right now." Lisa hesitates, then nods. All in favor of removing Alan Prescott as HOA president. Hands shoot up. Darius watches as Alan's world collapses. His grip on power shatters in real time, the smug confidence draining from his face. And just like that, Alan Prescott is done. Alan Prescott looks like a man who just watched his house burn to the ground. The community center is dead silent, but the weight of what just happened hangs heavy in the air. One moment, Alan was the untouchable HOA president, drunk on power. The next, a room full of neighbors just voted him out. His face is pale, but his mouth works overtime, trying to find a way out. This is ridiculous. He stands abruptly, knocking over his water bottle. "You can't just throw me out over some baseless accusations." Darius watches him carefully. Alan isn't just panicked. He's unraveling. Lisa, the HOA secretary, clears her throat. "Actually, per Section 4.2 of the HOA bylaws, an emergency vote can remove any board member with a majority decision." She glances at the raised hand still in the air, "which we just had." Alan whips toward her. "Lisa, you can't seriously be going along with this." Her lips press together. "Alan, you brought this on yourself." A murmur spreads through the crowd. People aren't afraid of him anymore. But Darius isn't done. Not yet. He steps forward, his voice steady. "You know, Alan, I actually thought you'd try to deny everything. But here's the thing." He pulls out a USB drive. Alan freezes. Darius holds it up for everyone to see. Turns out, a few residents in this community have security cameras that pick up audio, including mine. A ripple of shock runs through the crowd. Darius plugs the USB into Lisa's laptop, and the speakers crackle to life. Then, Alan's voice fills the room again. "I don't care what the bylaws say. People like Walker move in, and the next thing you know, property values start dropping." Gasps. Someone mutters, "Oh my God." The recording keeps going. Alan on the phone, complaining about keeping the neighborhood the way it should be, and how it was a mistake letting too many outsiders in. And just like that, the mask is off. Alan turns ghost white. That is edited. That is fake." Darius folds his arms. "Really? Because this came from your own neighbor's Ring camera." A woman in the back stands up. "He's right. That's my house. My camera." Alan spins on her. "Janet, you can't seriously." But Janet lifts her chin. "I've lived here for 15 years, Alan. I trusted you. And now, I'm sick to my stomach." Alan stumbles back like he's been slapped. His eyes dart around the room, searching for an escape. Darius watches, calm. This is what accountability looks like. Alan loses it. This is a setup. A smear campaign. "You people," he stops himself. But the room already knows what he was about to say. Lisa exhales. "Alan, I think it's best if you leave." Alan turns to the other board members. "You're just going to let this happen? I built this community. A man in a navy blazer, one of the senior board members, adjusts his glasses. No, Alan, we built this community, and you poisoned it. Alan staggers, the reality of his downfall slamming into him. Then it gets worse. A voice from the back of the room. Excuse me, Mr. Prescott? Everyone turns. Two men in suits stand by the door. One of them, a black man with a sharp professional stance, holds up a badge. Detective Harris, County Fraud Division. We'd like to speak with you. The room is dead silent. Alan chokes on air. Fraud? What the hell is this? Detective Harris steps forward. We received a report that the Kingston Heights HOA has been collecting funds for violations that don't exist in the bylaws. We've been investigating where those fines have been going. He tilts his head. And guess whose bank accounts they led to? Alan's face drains of blood. Murmurs explode in the crowd. Darius was expecting this. But damn, it's beautiful. Detective Harris crosses his arms. We have records showing HOA fines being redirected into your personal account. You want to explain that? Alan is shaking now. This is a mistake. A clerical error. Harris pulls out a folded document. Funny, because this error involves over $70,000. A woman gasps. Someone swears. Alan stumbles back. No, Harris nods to his partner. Click. The cuffs go on. Alan Prescott, you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement. The room erupts. Darius watches as Alan flails, shouting about how it's all a setup, a conspiracy, anything but the truth. But the detectives ignore him. They lead him through the stunned crowd, out the door, and into the night. Darius lets out a slow breath. It's over. Lisa straightens, visibly shaken but determined. Effective immediately, Alan Prescott is banned from the Kingston Heights HOA. A new president will be elected, and all pending fines issued under his leadership will be reviewed. A roar of approval. Neighbors cheer, some clapping Darius on the back. A woman shakes his hand. Thank you, she says, voice thick with emotion, for standing up. Darius smiles, feeling the tension in his chest finally ease. Alan thought he could bully him into submission, thought his power made him untouchable. He thought wrong. The news spreads faster than wildfire. By morning, every neighbor in Kingston Heights knows what happened at the HOA meeting. By afternoon, local reporters are knocking on doors, cameras rolling, eager to cover the scandal. The headlines hit hard. HOA president arrested for fraud. Targeted black homeowners. Alan Prescott exposed. Years of discrimination uncovered. It's not just local news either. A clip from the meeting, the moment Alan was voted out and arrested, goes viral. Social media erupts. Comments flood in, people sharing similar stories from their own neighborhoods. And just like that, Alan Prescott's world collapses. His accounts are frozen. The HOA launches a full financial audit, uncovering years of stolen funds. Lawsuits are already pending. His job, a senior position at a real estate firm, fires him within 48 hours. Neighbors who once blindly followed his leadership now shake their heads, muttering about how they had a bad feeling about him all along. But Darius wins, reclaiming peace. 2 weeks later, he's mowing his perfectly green lawn, not because of spite, not because he's trying to prove anything, just because he can. As the sun sets, Lisa from the HOA stops by. Mind if I sit? She asks, gesturing to the porch steps. He nods. She exhales, rubbing her temples. I knew Alan had issues, but I never thought, she sighs. I should have done more. Darius studies her. There's no defensiveness in her voice, just regret. You know, he says, a lot of people saw what was happening. They just didn't want to believe it. Lisa looks down. Yeah, and that's on us. Silence stretches between them, but it isn't uncomfortable. Finally, she glances up. The board voted to refund every fine Alan ever issued under his discretionary enforcement rule, including yours. Darius smirks. So, I don't owe the HOA $1,000? She laughs, shaking her head. Nope. In fact, she hands him an envelope. A group of us put this together. Consider it an apology. Darius opens it. A check. The exact amount Alan tried to fine him. He exhales. Didn't expect that. Lisa shrugs. Didn't expect you to take down an entire HOA president. But here we are. They sit there a moment longer, watching the sunset. Then she clears her throat. You know, the board needs a new president. Darius raises an eyebrow. Lisa grins. Just saying. He chuckles. I think I'll pass. I've done my part. Lisa nods, standing. Fair enough. As she walks off, Darius leans back against his porch railing. Looking out over his lawn, his home. Alan tried to make him feel unwelcome. Tried to break him, intimidate him, erase him. But instead, Darius is still here. And Alan Prescott? Gone.